Down is a song that is going to be the last song on the record. And I always heard it as the last song in my head for years. I was just like, this has to close out the record because it's a journey to get to it.
He's a singer and guitarist for Rebuilder, a band out of Boston. You may know them from their songs Le Grand Fromage or Get Up. Please welcome Sal Ellington to the podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm doing all right. I have my coffee, and I woke up probably 20 minutes ago, so I'm good.
All right. That's all you really need. Sounds like a good start to the day.
Yeah. How are you doing?
I'm doing okay.
Yeah.
Schoolwork's been getting kind of heavy, trying to get in a lot of content to kind of have that ready while I might not have like 30, 40 minutes, an hour to sit down with someone and talk to them. And so,
sure, yeah. No, I know what that's like. Where do you go to school?
I'm school right here in New York, and so yeah.
Cool.
So just
For
kind
what?
of. I'm still in high school, so just.
You're still in high school.
Yeah.
You have so much to look forward to.
And I'm looking forward to it now. I'm at the very start of the college process, and so
that's sick. That's awesome. That's
exciting
great.
And absolutely terrifying at the same time. So
you should. I mean, you don't really need to be like that terrified because like when you're in high school and like pre-college, you can do whatever the you want.
Yeah.
It's like you have zero responsibility. You can go like commit crimes and you won't even get in trouble. You're
get
good.
into legal trouble, have fun, do whatever you want, even if it's not something you're gonna do in life or after college.
Yeah, man. If I do that shit now, I get in big trouble. Like my whole career is gone.
Play sports. That doesn't mean you have to be a professional athlete. Do a podcast if you want. That doesn't mean I have to do it for the rest of my life going forward.
Absolutely.
So just kind of first off to get into it, what was your first experience with music like, or what made you get into it?
My grandfather and my dad both are guitar players, so I was always around music. My dad was a big rock and roll guy. My mom was big into like disco music, so there was always a lot of different music in there. And then my grandfather, he played like I think very like traditional music from Guatemala. So there was a lot of different music all over the house at all times. But I remember specifically my dad bringing me to see Aerosmith when I was a kid, and I mean it blew me away. I was like. Yeah. That's what I want to do for the rest of my whole life. Like, I mean, I just like watch these guys on stage with huge amps, drums on big risers and everything. And like, I was just like, this is the coolest band I've ever seen in my whole life. So, I mean, that for me was like the definitive point of like, I want to play music.
And so how old were you at that point?
I think I was probably like around like 8 years old, like 8 or 10, like around there, like in that range.
Mm-hmm. And so,
like, I want to play drums. I was like, I want to play drums, and my mom sent me, like, my parents sent me to like this school, like, and it was an arts summer camp, and they were like, yeah, figure out like what you're good at, and like I did soccer, I did clay making, photography, and I did drum class and rock and roll, and I remember like being in the rock and roll class first, and they were like, do you know how to play anything? And I was like, no, but I have drum class like right after this, so I think I'll be good. Just give me like a couple weeks. And they were like, all right, we're going to put you on this floor tom here, and you're just going to like play that and follow along as best as you can. But I remember going home telling my dad, I was like, I want a drum set. And he bought me a drum set, which was really nice.
So how did that kind of evolve from drum set to following your grandfather and being a guitarist?
I was playing drums in bands like pretty early on in all the high school bands, and that's if there's an instrument I would say that I'm probably best at, it would probably be drums. But it kind of like extend from like as I got older and I started getting into like punk music and watching other bands, like there was like particular people who were just such good frontmen, like Angelo from Fishbone, Jay from Suicide Machines. Those were like two people, and there was a local band called Kicked in the Head. The singer Gary, who's a friend of mine, he was very energetic, and I started kind of seeing all these people be frontmen. Always wondered if I could do it, and the band that we had then, I think we were a really bad band. I was in this string of very bad bands that I just like didn't realize how bad they were at the time because I was a kid. And I
no such thing as a bad band when you're a kid.
I mean, yeah, thought we were the greatest thing ever. We're like, we're just as good as these bands, but like in retrospect, I'm like, not really. But I remember that there was a show. I had started booking all these shows for my band, and our singer Andrew was like, "Well, I'm gonna be like on vacation this summer," and I was like, "Okay, well, I want to really play these shows," so I went to everyone in the band. And I was like, "What if I just sing for these shows, and I'll get my buddy to play drums?" And my buddy was like, "Yeah, man, I think you're just a drummer, though. I don't think that you should be singing." And I was like, "Who cares?" I was like, "There's people who are so bad at singing, and they get to play shows. So, like, let's just do it." And we did it, and I had so much fun doing it. And I kind of convinced that lineup to stay that way. And then we kicked out our singer who was on vacation. We brought him to Papagino's, and we bought him a pizza. And we were just like, "Sorry, you're out, but we bought you a pizza, like, and you didn't have to pay for it." And that was kind of like the way we did that. And I just like, after that point, I really just wanted to be the front man in a band. And I was for a while. There was a band called Sal Ellington that was pre-Rebuilder, and that was kind of what I did for a really long time, was just be the front man. During that time, I started like picking up a guitar, figuring it out. I took some lessons, and then when that band started falling apart, I've kind of always had this history of like things being out of my control, and people quitting the band, or like, no one being around, and I just kind of get in this mindset where I was like, I just don't want to rely on anybody. So I started kind of writing. I was writing songs in Sal Ellington anyway, but showing them to our guitar players because they were much better than I was. But when that thing fell apart, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to play guitar and sing. By this point, I had already worked for a lot of bands, become friends with bands, and there was like people that were integral in my mind to kind of me leading me in this decision was like Frank Turner and like Ben Nichols of Lucero were both two people who I was just like, those people write great songs. They are not amazing guitar players by any means, and they have careers. And I was like, I think that I should just go at it that way. So I wrote a whole batch of songs after that band broke up, and I was like, I'm just going to play guitar and sing in this band. Whatever this band comes up to be is what it comes up to be. And that's kind of what led to the beginnings of Rebuilder, was me leading from drums to that. But, I mean, even now I still go play drums at the practice space because my drums are set up there.
Yeah.
But there's too much drums. Like, drums, there's too much shit to lug around and everything. Like, all my shit's on wheels now.
It's so much to move, and just like...
So much.
Like, when you have a guitar, you pick up the guitar and, like, a pick, and you can go. On drum set, you need the sticks, you need a chair to sit on, you need all the drums and toms, both cymbals, more cymbals if you're, like, playing a more intricate piece.
The whole setup is just crazy. I mean, playing drums is so awesome.
At the bare minimum, you have, like, 5-6 things that you're moving from one place to another.
Even when I go to the practice space, which the drum set is all set up there, but, like, since we have different drummers coming in and out of there, you have to use your own cymbals. And, like, sometimes I'm just like, do I want to go through and, like, get my cymbal bag instead of the cymbals? Yeah. Sometimes, like, you know what? I'll just play guitar instead.
And so when you find that, like, a band kind of goes through its changes, people come in and out, maybe there are creative differences, do you find, but, like, mostly the personality change, do you find that kind of throws a wrench in the creative process of a band, or with your experience, have you just kind of kept songs going even despite different members?
I mean, it gets difficult for sure. Like, even where we are right now in Rebuilder, there's been, and it's like the older you get, the harder it is to just kind of keep people in the band. Life happens, and it's like, if this band was making so much money where I could pay all the band members, then it could be like, all right, cool, they don't have jobs to go to, and this is now something that like they love to do and would be like obligated to do because it's your financial.
This is now their job. That's the way they make
exactly. It. Yeah, I wish that I was at that point where I could do that, but unfortunately, it's just not the way it is. And the core members of Rebuilder have been me, Daniel, who plays bass and also helps me like manage and make the decisions in the band, Craig, who's our other guitar player and singer, and he's written a bunch of the songs in the band, and then Brandon on drums. But like Brandon is having a kid in June, and like him and his wife are having a baby. That's great for them. And so now we've had like Harley, who plays drums in Choke Up. He has come in and played drums in Rebuilder sometimes, but he moved to New York recently. So we've been recently playing with this guy, Steve, who used to play in a band called the Have-Nots, who were this awesome punk ska band from a while ago. And so we kind of have like all these people that we can pick from in drums. Craig is going to get married soon, and like he kind of started playing in some other bands. Doesn't have a lot of like time to contribute this to where he could always like go on tour. So it's one of those things where, we have this kid, Matt Spence, who lives in Western Mass, who was in the band called Stereo State. He's able to jump in and play. Or we can do things as like a 3-piece band. A lot of the ways that the way we used to work as a band was, we did a lot of, okay, this is what I want to do. I want to do these tours. We got offered these shows. Should we take them? Should we not take them? A lot of those discussions, and you start going and, seeing how everyone's feelings are on it, which is great if that works all the time, but it doesn't work all the time. And kind of where I'm at, it's like, I want to have more of a musical career than maybe some of the other people in my band. Where like, I think I will forever play music. I don't know if it'll always be under the name Rebuilder, but it might, because like at this point, it's kind of like Rebuilder's like a vessel just to kind of put songs out that are maybe more aggressive, or like catchy and aggressive, like depending on how we write. So, now a lot of it is like me and Daniel will get together, we write stuff, or we just kind of talk about like, what should we do this year? We got offered this. Should we do it? Is it worth us doing it? And then if we really want to do it, we'll say yes. Then we figure out who's going to play on it. Of course, in my head, I would always want Craig and Brandon, the original guys, to be there. Yeah. But that's just not my decision. And the thing is, like, does it change the dynamic? It's always going to change the dynamic when you play with other people. But that's why that's what's difficult, is finding people that I think is good enough to play with personality-wise and talent-wise. And it's just really hard to find someone that, like, one, is good and you can get along with,
And I'm sure it's hard, like you mentioned, but, like, and a lot of times this won't happen. By no means is this, like, a common occurrence. But I think you do find some bands that maybe they go through members, or, like, one or two people leave and they add on people, and maybe that helps improve the quality of their music, or they get more popular from that, and it's giving them more, it brings the band more success. It's not always an inherently negative thing that a band member has to leave. There can be improvements and pros to adding a new mind, a new person to
and I've always been like happy that, like, in Rebuilder, anytime anyone's kind of stepped away, it's never been because we don't like each other. Like, literally, anytime if you ever see Rebuilder and somebody isn't there, it's because they had a prior obligation. That's just like in life. Completely. It's never been because we don't like each other. Like, on this new record that's going to be coming out. I'm not sure, it's being mixed now, but we have a completely new record. There's more of my songs than Craig's songs on it because Craig stopped writing for the band because he got really busy and he didn't really have a lot of songs to write. So I started writing a lot more songs on this record and working with other people to help me finish this record. And it kind of pushed me and myself to be like, well, I've never really wrote alone. I've always kind of written songs with Craig. Well, now I kind of need to depend on myself more and kind of make, more committed decisions to being like, is this cool? And like, even during this process, I sent a lot of these songs that we were working on to Craig anyway. And I was like, what's your input on these? And he, even after we recorded them, because that's the thing, is like, even recording is different now. It's like, when we went and did, there was a whole pandemic going on. Like, we couldn't even get together to practice. We recorded 5 songs in January of 2020. And then March hit. We couldn't see each other. Me and Daniel lived together at the time, so we kind of worked on stuff. Yeah. And Harley from Choke Up was available to play drums. Brandon wasn't. He was living with his in-laws, and like, he's like, yeah, man, like, I can't really do anything right now. Yeah. So Harley was available, and we started practicing. Right, like, there was like 3 songs I wanted to work on, and he played on them. He wrote the drum parts for them, and we went and recorded it just as a 3-piece. Then Craig came in and added second guitar later. I think Brandon even added like guitar solo to it. So it's cool how it comes together, but it's not as like, the first record we literally went in. We took 6 days in a row and all went in, and everyone, and like, we usually do bass and drums first, and then I usually tell those guys, you don't need to come in anymore if you don't want to. You can go to work and whatever, and then we'll finish the rest. But that's usually how we did it. Like, this record has taken almost 2.5 years to finish.
I'm sure. And like, I've been talking with bands, and they're like, it's been so weird because we went from all being in the studio, getting part after part, to like, they have like a Google Drive or an email, and they'll be like, here's my part that I recorded, here's my part, and they'll send it off to a producer and be like, put it all together.
Right, which, like, I've seen people do that. I guess even that did happen on this record to some extent, but like, luckily the studio that we record at is 45 minutes away. So us going there and doing parts whenever we had time here and there, it was fine. But on this record, there's like horns from my friend Pete from Less Than Jake, and Chris Rhodes, who played trombone in Boston's, contributed some parts, and those were ones where they were just like, yeah, we'll send you the file. They sent us the file, pop it in. My friend Kaylin from Tiny Stills sang on a part on it, and she's out in LA, I think. Yeah, she's in LA, and like, sent me over her track. And then I think the last person who contributed something that way was Casey from Hot Rod Circuit played lap steel guitar on the track, and he's in Colorado. So it's like, and that's kind of the cool thing about technology now. It's like, you can just email people and be like, will you do this? I will give you money. And they're like, sure.
And there are like hundreds of websites just entirely built for that purpose. Like, put out what you can do or your job description, and someone can come along and pay you for that if they need it.
Yeah, but I'd be too neurotic to do that. I even when it came to like doing,
especially for like music or art, I feel like you have to trust people you personally know or have made connections with, rather than like hiring off the internet.
Yeah, and like, even when I was looking for the guest vocal track, I hit up like 6 people that were like friends of ours. I liked their voice, and they were like, "Yeah, I'll do it," and then they didn't do it. And then like, I was like, I gotta find somebody else. And then like, luckily Kaylin, like, she came through and did it, and she did exactly what I wanted to do, so which is great. But yeah, for a while I was like waiting for tracks from people, and I was like, nobody wants to do this. No one cares. It's not their band. It's my band.
So like, what tips or advice would you kind of give to people just starting a solo music career or starting with a band? What tips would you kind of give to them to get started?
Honestly, just play. It's like it seems like the most simple thing ever, but the more and more. So like I work in the music industry, and like I'm a merch seller for a lot of bands, big bands, small bands. I'm in venues all the time, and I see this kind of new wave of music that's come along. Not to sound like an old man yelling at the sky, but like I'm seeing a lot of music coming in that is like so-called like punk, but it's like a singer singing to like backing tracks.
It's like there's pop punk kind of.
Pop punk, but like not pop punk and like Blink-182 pop punk.
No.
It's like pop punk and like.
It's they contact a producer to get all the instrumentals, and then they just put their voice over that.
I don't even know how it comes together. It's like it's the strangest thing, but like I did merch once for Willow Smith, right? And I noticed that on stage, like she's singing, and it's her voice. There's obviously backing tracks that's like she's singing along to, but like, the rig that was side stage for sound was like so massive, and I was like, I've been in this room so many times. I've never seen someone build a whole world side stage that big, and I realized that it's because there's just so much bullshit. Like there's a kid on stage who's probably like 16, 17 years old playing guitar. They're not a really good guitar player, and it's the same thing on bass, same thing on drums. They're not very good. However, it's fine that they're not very good. They should just be kids and play and figure it out, and this is how you get better. But instead, what was coming through the PA system, I mean, I could tell, was like not what they were playing. Like, and I was like, I don't even know if they know. Like, they all have in-ear systems.
Yeah.
And I was like, I bet you what's being pumped into their in-ears is what they're actually playing. But what's coming through the PA system.
So the crowd is like a preset sound recording.
It's a preset track, and I was like, I don't even know if they know. And I start seeing all these other bands start coming up where like even the bands opening that show are like, there's no drummer because they don't have room to even carry a drum. So the drums are backing tracks. There's a guitar player, and there's like a DJ, and then someone singing. But like, again, they all have in-ear systems. The guitar player is like, you can't even hear the guitar, which makes me believe it wasn't even there. And I'm just like, why are we doing this? Like, just let kids play, just play. Like, make a band the same way that we all have. Like, there's new things now. Yes, there's technology to make you better. But, like, when you get on the stage with your friends, just play music. And if you suck, it's totally fine. Like, all my bands fucking sucked. Like, they were all terrible. I didn't know how to sing. I just kind of figured it out.
Yeah.
And, but we played shows in our shittiest versions of our bands. We all played shows. I still remember those shows because it was the funnest times I had. Like, I barely remember the show, but I remember the van ride over. I remember getting pizza afterwards. I remember, pulling pranks on my friends and just being like, this is the most fun ever. And I remember someone buying our t-shirt and like being like, well, they must like us. And we're making this music. Like, we're doing it. We're playing it. But we've sucked. But it's fine. It's like, what led me to this point in Rebuilder where I feel confident with the music we're putting out was all the bullshit that happened before that probably wasn't even that good. But I think that's the greatest thing about a band is just put it together and just play. And like, I'm like, I don't know. I've only used an in-ear system once, and it's just crazy to me. Which are like cool if you can afford it and you get to that point, awesome. But like, for kids who barely know how to tune their instrument, like, are you serious? Like, why do you have that? That's not how this really is.
Yeah, and I think it's definitely. I think even with an ear like yours, you were saying you could kind of tell whether it was what they were playing or a preset sound. So kind of like that. I feel like when you listen, especially now that a lot of music is like streamed on platforms, I feel like you can tell when it's like, we're a band, meet our drummer, meet our guitarist, meet our singer, versus like it's an artist, like just one person, but they still have like drums, guitars in this background. People are like, I know you're not a multi-instrumentalist playing all those parts and putting them together. It's kind of like a pre-recorded thing. A producer probably helped you, or you brought people in to like play drums for you?
Yeah, I don't know how it comes like about, like, you know, because I've always thought about the producer route, and I'm just like, did they contact someone and just throw them a bunch of money, and that's why they like came together?
Yeah.
Or is it like these labels again, like major labels, just kind of like doing what they did in like, you know, the '90s after grunge? It was like, and punk was basically like, bands. We're just gonna do one artist. We're gonna produce them. We're gonna get all the music out and put them on tour. But like when they did that, I mean, they were producing things like Britney Spears and NSYNC and like Backstreet Boys. I mean, all that stuff. Like, it's not my cup of tea, but like it sounded good. Like everything sounded good, and there was things to put them out. Like what I'm seeing now is just like, I mean, these it doesn't sound good. The groups aren't very good. They're not killing it in merch. They're like barely getting by, and I'm just like, what's the point? Just playing music with your friends. It's just like, that's the coolest part of this, you know?
Mm-hmm. And so, like, whether it was one of your bands kind of ending or having any sort of disagreement in the band, was there ever a moment that made you think about like stopping music for a bit, or like taking a break, or anything like that kind of like discouraged you from music?
I mean, it happens all the time. I mean, it happens even now. Like, you know, I went on like a Dropkick Murphys tour in March, and I drove a box truck every day, a 15-foot box truck, and I sold merch every day too. That wasn't the intent, but like, I ended up selling as well. But I was driving the truck, and I was like, I mean, after a month, I was like, I just got paid a shitload of money to do this, which is awesome. And like other people have offered me tours, been like, oh, I heard you do the box truck thing. And I'm like, I don't really. I just did this one job because it was slow here. There wasn't much going on, which there usually isn't anything going on in like January, February-ish around here because it's too cold. And I did that, and like, I was like, man, I could just do this all the time. I mean, I can just go on tour, just sell merch for bands, and then like, you know, and if I do the box truck thing, do that, and just make a whole bunch of money, make way more money than I would being just here working at the venues around here. But I feel like the reason I always make myself like not do that is because like the more and more I'm gone working for other bands, the less time I'm here working on my own music, you know? And it starts getting to me. It gets to the point where, like, once I've been away for a really long time, it's always in my head, like, I'm just helping someone else's band out. Even if they're huge, you know? It's like,
you kind of start itching to get back to your band for...
Well, you know?
Yeah, like, but like what you're doing.
It would be so much cooler. It would be so much cooler just if I was, like, working on my own stuff. But, like, it just doesn't pay. So it's like, you know, I still need to retain a job. And, like, at least here, like, right now, like, selling merch for a band, for bigger bands, is, like, really good money now. So, like, I've actually been able to, like, take a lot of jobs here and make really good money and not always feel that I'll have to leave. And I hope that stays that way. Because, I mean, I love touring. And, like, touring with, like, Dropkick, it's, like, great. It's, like, they're all my friends. You get to see, like, cool places and, like, I don't know, like, when you tour in Rebuilder, it's like, we're driving, we have an hour before doors usually to, like, get something, and we're in the worst part of town because the venues we play at are not anywhere near anything cool. You know, it's just, like, it's different, but it's your own music. And, like, for me, if you're, like, you can go on a month-long tour playing your own music, and you're going to lose money, or you can do this other tour, make a whole bunch of money, but you're not going to play. You're going to sell. I'll take playing any day. You know. Yeah. So it gets frustrating. It gets hard. I mean, like even like now, I see a lot of our.
You reach a point of kind of like what you want to do, because like everyone would love to be the person on stage, like performing to a crowd, but like at some point you might just need to be the merch seller just to make money, to have income And
for sure. And I mean, I got into the merch game early on because I thought it would help me with my music career. I was like, well, I'll meet a lot of people this way. Has it? I don't know. I don't know if I can really answer that. Maybe, yeah. I mean, I've met a lot of people through there. Like, Rebuilder's first show was opening for Dropkick Murphys at House of Blues because I'd worked for that band for so long.
Mm-hmm.
The last show in that year was closing out the year opening for the Bosstones at House of Blues. And I was like, and then our middle show that year was like opening for Dead Milkmen at Sinclair. None of those things would have been possible had I not already had worked for all these bands, known all these people. For sure. There's like absolutely for sure that wouldn't have happened.
Mm-hmm.
But I think a lot of times because I've been in the merch game for so long, a lot of people think of me as just the merch guy, and they don't think of me as a musician. And maybe my bands don't come up right away for like, oh yeah, let's take this band out on tour. Like, we don't get offered the tour slots as much as some of our other friends who are just a band, just a musician. That's all they do. They don't work in the industry.
Yeah.
And, they're probably more popular than us, so they're getting offered stuff. I'm hoping that once this new record comes out, we can probably try to find a booking agent. We had one for a little bit, but it was the worst experience I ever had. And, we can do more tours, go over to the UK, go over to like mainland Europe and do a lot of that stuff that we've never done before. But, it's hard for someone to like want to like, your hype machine is gone when you haven't put out a record in a long time,
Are you able to talk more about that booking agent thing? It's also like, if you don't want to touch on it, that's fine, no pressure, but it's just what happened there, kind of just...
I mean, I talk all the time, so I will tell you whatever you want to know.
Great to hear.
I won't tell you their name, but like, essentially, we opened for NoFX at Punk and Drublick Festival when it came to Boston. It was crazy, too, because we were in Montreal the night before, and then we got a call from NoFX's tour manager at the time, and he was like, can you guys open this? And I was like, we're in Montreal the night before, let me see if we can even make it possible. And everyone rallied, and we were like, we'll just leave after our set, 2 o'clock in the morning, we'll drive all night, we'll get to the stadium, we slept in our dressing room, like that was like it was a baseball field, so it was like one of those like sky boxes.
Yeah.
They're like, this is your room. We're like, cool, we're going to sleep. We have not slept. It was awesome, but we played, and we did really well. Like, I remember Bad Cop needed like gear. And we're like, you guys can use ours, and then it started to rain, and Mad Caddies were like, can we just use the gear on stage? And we let Mad Caddies use it. And then at the end, like, Steve, who was NoFX's like TM, was like, you guys are awesome. Here's like your pay. And he's like, who books you guys? And I was like, we don't have an agent. And he's like, send me an email, I'll help you out. And I emailed him, and Bad Cop were like, we want to take you out on tour, and we'll tell our agent about you. So Steve then I sent him an email, and he was like, I've emailed a couple people about you. You're going to be hearing from this person. So then this person reached out, and they were like, I've heard good things about your band, like from a couple of people, and like, I want to help you out and book you. And I was like, this is awesome. And then, we were like, well, let's do this. And then I think just like nothing happened for some time. And I remember like talking to Daniel and being like, well, we got offered, I think at some point we got offered like a Frank Turner show. And I was like, well, we got to do that Frank Turner show. Let's do a tour after that. Let's send these dates to our agent, say this is where we want to go, and see how it goes. And like every single time I contacted this person, they were so annoyed that I contacted them. And they were just like so annoyed, and was like, you gotta just let the process happen. And I was just like, what process?
But like at some point you don't.
Yeah, I was like, the process of like you not getting me anything.
Artists don't sit around and wait for their agents to say like, "Hey, got you a show this day in this city, this day," until they have a full tour list. They have to work to go out.
Or there's things you submit for. So
Yeah,
like, you
yeah.
know, like she would like they would start sending us over every once in a while. I would hear, this band is going on tour. Do you want to submit for it? And I would look at the routing and look who the band is for, and I'd be like, no, or like, yes, let's submit for it. But I was like, at the time, I had someone who was like kind of working at one of the bigger agencies, and they were like an assistant, and they were like, I'll let you know when there's tours are actually like going out and like need people.
Yeah.
And they were telling me about great tours. Now I went to my agent and I was like, hey, can we submit for this, this, and this? And they'd be like, I swear no one else is on me all the time about this. Maybe this won't work out. And I was just like, this is so annoying. Like, what am I supposed to do? Like, how do I know? Like, they would be like, I already submitted you for that stuff. I was like, how do I know? Because you didn't ask me about it at all. So then we did our tour, all the places that, like, we didn't hear back from them for so long that me and Daniel booked, like, most of it. And the ones that we booked, and this is not just like our agent thing. This, I think, goes for every agent.
Mm-hmm.
But like when we book a tour, if we're playing Pittsburgh, we would hit up the bands that we know in Pittsburgh, the promoters that we know in Pittsburgh, and we would say, "Want to do a show? Can you find us locals?" Or, "We want to play a show. This is who we want to play with if they're available." Or we'll be like, "We talked to them already. They're available. We need maybe 2 or more bands." They'll be like, yeah, we'll take care of it. And those shows always go well. We're on top of it. They make Facebook events and Instagram posts for it, and it's great. When you have an agent, they will basically just look at like where they put their artists in the rooms. And let's say the room in Pittsburgh is not the right fit for the room for you to play. If they can get your guarantee in that room, they're just going to put you in that room. Because they're like, well, they're going to give the guarantee. And like, depending on the guarantee, if it's really high, then the promoter's going to work extremely hard. Because he needs to make back that money.
Yeah.
When the guarantee is $100 and $200, it's like, that promoter can just let that show slip through their fingers, and then at the end of the day go, well, this show sucked. Sorry, better luck next time. You know? And you're like, how come this wasn't taken care of more? How come, like, we weren't on top of, like, who the opening bands were? We weren't on top of, like, the fact that there's no event for it anywhere at all. And that's what I saw with the shows that our agent booked. They booked, like, 3 or 4 of them. And all of them, like, didn't have events. When they did have opening bands, they didn't make sense. And those shows did terrible. And I remember, like, talking to our agent afterwards. I was like, I never want to play that room ever again. And they're like, well, they gave the guarantee. I was like, for $200, I will just give you $200 to not put me in this room ever. I mean, I was like, I have a job at home. Like, I work. Like, I don't need $200 so desperately that I'm going to play this room. So when we saw that tour, basically the 3 shows that they did or whatever, where we headlined on our own, did terrible. It was just like, I was like, well, that sucks. And then we got booked like another Frank Turner show, and I heard from our agent so fast that was like, I need my cut of those shows. Like, you have to give me a cut of those shows. I was like, you didn't book those. I was like, I am happy to give you a cut of shows that you did not book if I'm getting a lot in return from you.
Yeah.
But I have gotten nothing. So, like, why do I want to give you a percentage? And it was like, I think we got $500 for that show. So, like, they were getting $50. And I was just like, I can't believe this person's coming after me so hard about $50. And like, they got paid their $50, and then I think I was just like, I hit up like another friend of mine who was an agent, and I was like, what should I do? Like, should I pay them the $50 and then just like, what, like, keep them or what? And they're like, just pay them the $50 and move on. They're like, they're not doing anything for you. Granted, this booking agent, like, they're a very nice person. their whole life was like falling apart right at the time when they took us on. And that sucks. And I'm very sympathetic to like everything that happened in their personal life during this time. But I still have to look out for myself. And like, if every time I'm reaching out, I feel like I'm belittled, like I would always describe it as, having a booking agent is literally someone telling you every day that they don't care about your art, but they want their cut, And like, it felt like that way for sure. I was just like, this person literally cares nothing about my band, but they want their percentage. So that was the only booking agent experience we had. I mean, I have other friends in the agency who are great people who every once in a while will throw us cool stuff. But yeah, it was kind of like, I hated that. And I was just like, that sucked.
And so when you're with the band kind of coming up with a new song to kind of be made, what is that? You mentioned it earlier that you might like write a song and maybe try to get some input on it, or like do drums and bass first. But what does that kind of process look like when you get in the studio?
It changes. Like even from record to record, it changed. Like, the first EP that we did were all just like 6 of my songs that I wrote, and they were just like the first songs I wrote, and I was just like, here's how the songs go. I need you guys to like play on them. And then Rock and Roll in America was like, I have some songs, but now Craig's writing in the band too. And then at some point, even in that process, it was decided that he would sing some of his songs. But even in that record, there's like discrepancies. Like, he wrote National Bohemian, and it was one of the first songs that we did, but it wasn't known if he was going to like sing leads. I was kind of scared to like let anyone else sing leads in the band, because again, I came to this process out of another band breaking up, and I didn't want to rely on. I was like, what if you're not there, But so I sang. We both harmonized together on that whole song, but I kind of like sang leads on that. Then by the time we get to like Heart Attack, which is a song that Daniel wrote the original like skeleton for, which Daniel doesn't really write a lot of songs, and he contributed that one. And I think Craig took that song and finished it in a real structure. And I think by the time we got to that song, Craig was like, well, we're going to back and forth, but I'm going to sing a bunch of leads on there. Which is why, like, by the time you get to the last song on that record, American Dread, Craig's singing leads for the whole thing. Because even during that time of songwriting, by the time we get to writing that song, it is established that he's going to be singing some songs by himself, where I'll just harmonize because he wrote it. And so I would show him songs, he would show me songs, and we would work on them. If it needed a new idea, if it needed a part or something like that. Brandon, our drummer, is the best guitar player in the band, so he will even contribute guitar things once we're in the studio or once we're writing. Some songs, it was like fully completed, and he was like, this is how it goes, But most of them, there were a contribution. Like Grand Fromage, which is our most popular song, is a song that Daniel wrote after we played a venue called Le Grand Fromage, which is just like a show. But like Daniel was like super bummed out, and he wrote like the lines for that song in his like little binder. And then like when he went home, he gave us like a voice memo of like, hey, I've been working on this, and we were like writing for the record. So he like submitted that, and we're like, oh, this is the verse and this is the chorus. Like, this is so good. And I remember him being like, is that the chorus? I was like, yeah, it is. Like, that's the coolest part of the song. And we like helped finish that song. I contributed some stuff to it. Craig figured out kind of the structure of that song, but it kind of came from Daniel's set. That was kind of the same thing for Heart Attack. Those two contributions, which are two very fan favorites. Then when we get to Mass Turnpike, I think it was split the same. I think it was like, 3 songs were mine, 2 songs were Craig, but most of those we sing together, and I think there's only one that he sings by himself on. Well, there's 2 where he sings by himself, but I accompany, and then the other 3 were mine, but one of them is split back and forth. Yeah, Nasty Habit was split back and forth, but that's one of his songs. And now, like, if we do shows where he's not there, I sing those songs.
Yeah.
And it's harder to sing those songs for me because I didn't write them for like my vocal range.
Yeah.
But I love his songs, so like I'm more than happy to play those. And this new record, like, there were songs that I had to show to other people, and I showed to Craig that I just had bits and ideas for. There's stuff that didn't make this record that is still in my head. Like, I don't think it's completely finished yet. Like, it hasn't hit me where I listen to it, I go, this is a done song, this is a great song. But Monuments was one that, you know, we'd recorded the first 5 songs on the record. Pandemic hits. George Floyd riots start in May. And I sat with my guitar, and I think I wrote Monuments that night very quickly. Came up with the words probably like the next day. Showed it to Daniel, and I was like, hey man, like, here's a rough demo of this song, but like, I would love if we can like literally release this very quickly.
Yeah.
And raise money for Black Lives Matter. And there was a thing going around in Boston that was like a free studio day. And I was like, we should just submit this song for that and see if we get the free studio day. And we did. So then we went in and recorded it. Harley played drums. I showed it to him. We had like 3 practices before we went in. My buddy Pat came in and played keys, who'd played keys on Mass Turnpike. And like, I did the lead guitar parts on all that. Like, there's 2 there, and then there's rhythm. There's 2 rhythm parts. I did everything. It's the first time for me doing all the guitar parts. And the mix wasn't quite right when we got it back from that free studio, and so we sent it to Jay Moss, who did all of our stuff, and he mixed it the way it needed to sound.
Yeah. And
it's one of my favorite things that we ever did. But I always say that that's the fastest anything's come out with us. It took like a month, maybe like less.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And it takes, I mean, the new record that we're putting out is years of work. I mean, some of those songs are like 5 years old. But yeah, I mean, Monuments came together really fast. It just kind of depends. Like, you know, if I'm very inspired or like, you know, very kind of just like looming on something that is happening, maybe that helps me kind of write it faster because it's all in my mind. It's harder when nothing's happening. If I'm like, I have to sit down and write a song today, I have nothing to stem from, that's the hardest part for me. It's just like, I just don't know, like, what am I going to write about if I have nothing inspiring to write about, you know? And I have to wait for some bullshit to happen in my life that makes me want to write it, you know?
So, whether it's like you alone or like with the band Rebuilder, if you got the opportunity to kind of have your pick and make a song with any artist or band in the world, who would it be?
So I worked the Jawbreaker Get Up Kids show last night, and I love Get Up Kids. I had emailed Matt Pryor about producing this latest Rebuilder record, because I was like, I think working with Matt Pryor would be awesome. I never heard back. But that's someone who I would love to like have Matt Pryor produce anything for Rebuilder. I think it would be so cool. Joe Gittleman, who was the bass player of the Bosstones, I think is a really good songwriter. He wrote this. He had a band called Avoid One Thing, and they wrote the song "Lean on Sheena," which was then covered by the Bouncing Souls on the Gold record. And it's kind of become a song that like everyone attributes to Bouncing Souls, and they completely forget that's even a cover by Avoid One Thing, which I think just shows you how good of a song it is. You know, like the fact that someone else can cover it and like people are like, that's their song because they did such a good job of it. I think he's a great songwriter. I would love to like write stuff with him. He's another one that comes to mind. I think Frank Turner is brilliant too, so I would love to like work with him on something at some point. That's kind of like, you know. Oh, John Reese from Rocket from the Crypt is one of my favorite things, as I'm wearing a Rocket from the Crypt shirt. But like everything John Reese has ever done is like some of my favorite stuff. I love the Hot Snakes. I love Night Marchers and stuff like that. And I know he's worked with like some of the bands that I like on things, and I just feel like if I worked with him on something, it would probably be amazing.
Yeah. And so you mentioned like with all the jobs you do throughout the music industry, you've worked at all kinds of venues. Is there any one like dream venue that you would just love to perform, or like would want Rebuilder to have a show in?
Like every venue, like it's just one of those things. Like, yeah, I mean,
you kind of like find something special about every venue, or
kind of, yeah, and like especially like when I tour with these bands. I mean, like looking at these rooms, how big they are, I'm just like, I want Rebuilder to play this. You know, like
yeah.
I looked at Turnstile playing Red Rocks, and I was like, this is the coolest thing ever. I want to play Red Rocks, and I want it to be awesome like that. You know, the Gorge in Washington is another one that like just looks over all this mountain range and stuff, and it's like one of the coolest places. I was like, I want to play that. But then you go into these old theaters that are like huge. There's one in Seattle called the Neptune. That's awesome, and it's great. And I was like, I want to play here. But then I also go into rooms that hold like 100 people.
Yeah.
And I was like, I want to play this room and have it just pop off. I want to play this room and just have it be crazy and awesome. You know? Yeah, I just feel like, I don't know, when I see videos online of other bands playing rooms and it just looks like the best thing in the world, I'm like, I want to play that.
Yeah.
I'm also really weird in that, like, I'll go to a restaurant and I'll be like, man, how awesome would it be if we played here?
You start visualizing, you were like, we could set up over there, we'd have speakers over there.
yeah, I'm just like, we could do it here. And Daniel's like, you're crazy.
And so, like, with Rebuilder, or with, like, any of the other bands you've been in, has there kind of been a song, writing-wise, guitar-wise, that you've had a hand in that's kind of, like, your favorite, or, like, that you feel the most proud of?
I mean, right now, I feel like it stems from... Monument is a big song for me.
Yeah.
Just because, like, I've never it's hard for me to write songs about stuff that isn't directly about me. It's just very difficult. And, you know, Monuments did have an impact on my life because it's like, you know, seeing racism happen in the streets and, like, you know, it's like directly impacts me for sure. But, like, it's more of like political response song to like what you see happening.
Yeah.
But musically, it's just like, you know, the first time that like I figured out the lead parts, I wrote them, I recorded them, and I always listen to that. I love how it sounds, and I'm like very proud of that song because of that.
Mm-hmm.
There's a new song on the record called Down, and Down is a song that is going to be the last song on the record. And I always heard it as the last song in my head for years. I was just like, this has to close out the record. Because it's a journey to get to it. It's like one of those where it's just like not your very typical Rebuilder song. And I remember Craig kind of like, he made a comment the other day when we had a rehearsal that was like, he's like, good on you for seeing this through. Because he's like, I not see where the song was going and like kind of just lost interest in it when we stopped playing it like years ago. But in my head, I was like, it's almost like a kind of Tom Petty slow groove song. And I was like, there's going to be keys here and here. There's going to be lap steel, and then it's going to get loud, and the horns are going to come in and all this stuff. And like in my head, I could picture it. I just knew that until we got to the studio, it would be hard to picture because then we're practicing and we're practicing the song in the practice space, and I'm like, okay, cool, we have all the parts, but no one else can visualize what's happening in my head. So everyone's just like, I don't know about this song, and I'm like, just trust me, like you will hear it. Unfortunately, by the time they can hear it, it's like 3 years later. You know, like 3 years later, and now they're hearing it. And Craig was like, "This song is it's awesome," but like I just had no idea that this is where it was going.
And it's great when that can happen. But like even though it takes such a long time to do it, I think it's definitely something special when you have a song or or just have like an idea for the song and you already know what kind of song you want it to be, what you want to do with it. Like if you get a feeling that it's a start to an album or end to an album, like anything like that, I feel like that means that's probably gonna be like an important song too.
Yeah, and I mean, like, I know that, like, when we were writing, like, sequencing's always really important to me too. But, like, the first EP that we did, the ending song was Head Rush, and I was writing that as to be the last song. So, like, I kind of had a bit more of an epic ending to it, and it's actually, like, one of the only songs where Daniel contributed, like, backing vocals to, because it was really early on, and we gave him a microphone. But, like, that was the ending song for a while. Then, Rock and Roll in America, and Craig wrote American Dread, and it was just so obvious that that's the ending song. And when we're writing it, we're like, well, if it's the ending song, we have to, like, make it the ending song. I, like, elongated the end and added this, like, whole, like, tension-building thing that happened at the end of the record. So then, when we're playing live, Head Rush almost went out the window because it was just like, well, you can't put that somewhere else if it's not the end song. And I always liked that song, but American Dread was just such a better ender. So then American Dread became the ending song for a while. Mm-hmm. We did Mass Turnpike, and Vivir y Morir was the last song on that. And we purposely, it has like a lot of elements that would make it feel like a bit bigger of a song. And I was like, I think this should be the end. I think it can be a closer. And then I think we kind of started introducing it into our live show as a closer. And I feel like we lost the room every time. Like, it was one of those things where it was just like, I think the song is great. It's a bit more technical. So I think it was a bit more technical where we had to pay attention to what we were playing more. We couldn't just kind of like have energy and just play it out. You had to pay attention to what you were playing. I think maybe because of that, we were not as energetic when we played that song, which maybe made the crowd not really care that much. It was never a song that was requested or anything. So we've only really, like, I think we took it out of the set list. We only play it when we've done the EP in its entirety a couple of times. And we've been like, well, we got to learn it and play it. And I still think it's good. But it just didn't take the place of American Dread. So American Dread kind of always still stayed as the closer. Then on this new record with Down, when I wrote Down, I started putting it into set list as the closer to feel it out, and when we were on tour, just so we can get tighter with it. And once we got tight with it and it was good, I kind of removed it because I was like, well, it's not on anything, so I don't want to keep playing it and let people have that the last thing they remember of us if they can't buy it and they can't listen to it anywhere. So And then Monuments has now become the closer. Like, if it's a show where, like, we feel like we could do if we have a longer set, we could probably do Monuments into American Dread. But Monuments has become such a good closer of a song, which wasn't intended. But with the key that it's written in and how powerful it is, it's one of those where I'm like, okay, this is awesome that this can be a new closer for it. And I think we'll probably go flip-flop between that and Down and American Dread. But yeah, I always think about it. If I'm like, this is the last song, we're going to let you know it's the last song. You're going to know with everything,
All right, well, those are all the questions I had for you today. Thank you so much for coming on. It's been a great time talking. Where can people find you online? Any Instagram, websites, music platforms, anything you got? Where can people find you?
We're pretty much on everything as Rebuilder Boston. So if you search that on Spotify or Bandcamp is where we have all of our merch. So if you're looking for merch or records, you can buy it on rebuilderboston.bandcamp.com. If you care to see all the dumb shit that I do on the internet, my handle is Sal Ellington on my Instagram, and you'll either follow and unfollow very quickly, or it'll become your next favorite Instagram account, however you want to play it.
All right. Well, thank you again for coming on. It's been
Yeah,
great,
man.
and I'll keep an eye out for that record you got coming out.
Yeah, awesome. And if you want to talk again once that record comes out and you have more questions, feel free.
Sure. I'll keep in touch.